Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is Thursday, September 16th, 2021. Let's get right into it. Our space weather coming in. Right now we're looking at solar wind speeds at 310 kilometers, 310.5 kilometers per second with a density of 5.4. We are blank. Yes, we are blank. We've had lots of activity over the past several weeks. We had a sunspot number of 99 just 4 or 5 days ago. So we are blank once again. The corona does look a little weak, but nothing too large of concern as far as coronal holes affecting Earth's magnetosphere. Now, there is a minor geomagnetic storm watch that we are in right now. A CME is approaching Earth for a close encounter. Tomorrow, September 17th, it will either miss or deliver a glancing blow. Both outcomes are equally possible given uncertainties in the CME's trajectory. So they're at least calling for a G1 class. And again, G1 fairly minor. Once again, I have to report that we are experiencing solar minimum conditions. Even though we had all this sunspot activity and CMEs crackling all over the place, our cosmic radiation dosage rates are sitting at 9.6%, folks. That is about the average of what it was during the deeper part of this current minimum that we are coming out of, going into this upcoming solar max. So we're still pumping out solar minimum conditions, even though we have seen lots of sunspots, lots of solar flares, lots of CMEs, prominence. I mean, you name it. We've had it all. But yet here we are, sun's asleep once again. And it does not appear we have any sunspots in the near future. We could see another day without sunspots or more. Unusual, right? We had all this activity and like that, things go back to sleep. It makes you wonder how much closer we actually are now to the Terminator event. I think it's flirting with us right now, and we could see it any week, any month. It's that close. I don't know about any day, but it's getting close. But back to our stats. Our KP indices at a 1, 24-hour max is 2. Those are solar minimum conditions. TCI up at 5.52. We're still in the cold range of that. So low solar winds, no sunspots. This is the 57th day without sunspots in 2021. And if you compare it to the last solar minimum as we came out of the one in 08 and 09, just like we came out of 19 and 20, the following year's sunspots in 2010 came out to be 51 spotless days. Right now, we are showing more spotless days coming out of our recent minimum than we did in the one back in 08 and 09. So just thought I'd throw those little facts in there as well. And as far as what we are going to be discussing tonight, well, I wanted to report on mainly just the volcano situation, the seismic activity. I counted earlier, I believe we have somewhere in the tune of 41 volcanoes in active, either in eruption or minor activity. So we've seen a slight decrease in some of that activity. We were in the 50s a few months back. But again, we were also in a much deeper part of the minimum. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is that there has been quite a bit of information going around about this new report on the magma intrusion here at La Palma, Canary Islands. And I looked at this, and I'm always trying to be the middle guy when it comes to displaying the information, if it's being sensationalized or whatever. So I started looking at this, and I'm thinking, okay, there is a good chance of eruption on this actual volcano. So going over some of the bits of articles that I've read on a couple different websites, it does appear that they are keeping an eye on. Now, they're not saying anything about imminent eruption. That's not in the wording at all in this report. But it is interesting to watch. And I say this because this right here at the bottom, they talk about where the sites that we're seeing the swarms in are also the sites of eruptions from 1480, I believe. So they showed 4 years, 1480, 1585, 1712, and 1949. And two of those were grand solar minimums, and 2 were not. And it appeared the 2 weaker ones were during the ones that weren't in grand solar minimums. Now this is just on the part of the islands that we're talking about. I'm sorry, I'm reading this as I go, and I apologize, folks, because I can't find those years now, and I wanted to show you that. There was 2 different articles I'm looking at. So sometimes that happens. I apologize. But Electroverse is covering this. Watchers is covering this. There's a lot of information being thrown around, but it seems to me that we are seeing this because of what possibly could be happening here right now. Here it is. Eruptive sites of 1480, 1585, and 1712, 1949. And then in the other article, which is the more recent one right here, it also adds more dates, more years of when we have had broad lava flow and destructive eruptions. And it's interesting to look here. 1585 was not in a grand solar minimum. 1646 was. 1712 was. 1949 wasn't. And 79 wasn't. So again, the ratio, 2 grand solar minimums and 3 in eras where there wasn't in a grand solar minimum. So they gave us a couple more dates to kind of go off of. But I just think it's interesting that the earthquake swarms are happening in the same areas. They are shallow. And look, I trust watchers more than any other source out here as far as this kind of information. And reading through this, the possibility of this eruption is there, but they also want to highlight that as far as the big one happening, where we get this collapse of the volcano into the ocean. And that's kind of what they show us here over at Electroverse, this very informative YouTube video that talks about the mega tsunami at La Palma. And I find it very informative. The maps, what we have here, it shows us how the wave will reach. Someday again, like it did 500,000 years ago, a large piece of La Palma will break away. Someday. They're not saying it's today or tomorrow, but great descriptions and visual on what is going to happen here. That's saying as much as 500 cubic kilometers of rock will tumble into the sea, which would create waves 100 meters high, and they would ripple through the Atlantic. So basically, this collapse would cause these tsunami waves that ripple across the Atlantic and to the eastern coast here of the United States, Canada, parts of shores of Greenland, and the lighter purple, the weaker the waves. We're talking 25 meters or less in Greenland and Canada. But the interesting stat, or the possibility here, is for the eastern United States, New York City, Boston, parts of Maine, parts of the East Coast, the Carolinas. They're talking anywhere from 30 feet to 80 feet type waves to overcome the shores on the East Coast. And again, I give this video credit for displaying the facts on how and what's going to happen. This is just a model, though. This is not for certain. This is what they think happened 500,000 years ago. Okay? And this eruption does not necessarily mean that that kind of collapse will happen, because we've had eruptions at this volcano in this site at least 5 different times over the past 400 years or so. Yes, a couple of them happened in grand solar minimums, and then a couple didn't. So there's no certain way to say that these eruptions were strong enough to produce that kind of a collapse. But North America gets approximately about 30 meter run up, a bit less to the south. 30 meters is 90 feet. This would wipe out the East Coast, obviously. This would cause all kinds of flooding damage. Because, I mean, loss of life is imminent with something like this. Look at that, 40 meters. And of course, less going south. Now, they do make a very important fact here at the very end. Let's go. Yep, here we are. So to me, it looks like really the stronger part of this tsunami could be South America. La Palma tsunami has consequences similar to Japan's 2011 wave, but it would only affect 100 times. Wait, let's back that up. Sorry. But would affect 100 times more on the coastline. So, yes, this wave would be destructive. Absolutely. But this is very important here at the very end of this. On the bright side, there is no evidence that this will happen anytime soon. ... And with the odds of a collapse just a few % each century, don't rush to sell your seaside condominiums. So, kudos, Electroverse, for showing the truth and not trying to scare the bejesus out of people, but actually a video that's very informative on the tsunami, but also shows the confidence in this kind of event. Now, the reason why I brought this up too is because it's not the only time we've seen earthquake swarms around large volcanoes that could cause big problems and nothing happens. Puerto Rico, 9,000 earthquakes from 2019 through 2021, I believe. And we've seen swarms out there just continue to happen over and over and over. Very weak little earthquakes, but they're happening. And the only thing that I can offer up as a reporter on this, I'm not an expert, but to me is that we are seeing the uptick in seismic activity because of how low the solar activity actually is. Now, what's unfortunate right now is that the sun is in a state of where it is favorable for volcanic activity when KP indices are at a 1 with a 24-hour max of a 2. Anything low between 0 and 2 and coronal holes earth-facing gives you a solid shot of seeing some type of seismic activity. And right now we got a couple of small coronal holes that could affect in the northern part of our star that could affect Earth. And then there's a couple of coronal holes to the southern and near the equatorial region that are turning towards the Earth in the next couple of days. So my conclusion on this is that this is definitely worth something. It's worth watching for sure. Definitely can say that. But as far as the tsunami, well, here's what's got to happen for that. The right amount of collapse. And then, unfortunately, we would only have 9 hours to actually be evacuated from the coast. Not all of the East Coast will be wiped out. The coastal areas for sure on a wave that big. So is it possible to evacuate everyone from the... I mean, there's 11 million people in New York City. It'll be very, very, very tricky folks. So again, it's not a likely scenario. They don't expect it. There's no evidence to say that this tsunami is going to happen, but still something very interesting to watch because it's happening at the very beginning of this grand solar minimum. And the last time it did that, where it happened twice in a grand solar minimum, was the Maunder minimum, the 1642 eruption and the 1712. 2 eruptions in one grand solar minimum. So is it possible that we see 2 of these eruptions in the next 35 years that are significant? Only time will tell. It is worth watching though, folks. And I kind of wanted to just jump on and do a quick report about the volcanoes and what we're looking at right now. Now, I don't know if Mari has announced this yet, but here shortly after the broadcast is concluded here on the Grand Solar Minimum channel, we are going to be joining David Dubine, Adapt 2030. He has his own show on Revolution Radio, I believe. Studio A, I'm not sure, but Mari says she's trying to figure out stuff to hop onto the next show with Adapt. So, Mari, if you want to share that link, if you have it, go right ahead. But we are joining Adapt 2030 tonight on our radio podcast. Folks, there are some concerning things to talk about. We have problems already. On top of just basic shortages all over the world on basic goods, and how crops this year, how the yield is going to be a lot weaker than what it was expected, and what that's going to do to prices for our food. And, you know, talking to our good friend Matt Brose, who's a farmer in Nebraska, and one of his concerns is how are they going to be able to, with the crop yield that they're going to be looking at, he's concerned about being able to afford feed for his cattle. That's what they do in the winter. When they're not growing corn, they're in the cattle market there. So that's concerning, hearing that from my farmer friends. And I know Dave is not exaggerating the truth about, you know, grain prices. No one is better up to date on market stuff when it comes to agriculture than David Dubine. He is definitely one of the top experts as far as when it comes to agriculture. And, you know, he does a lot of research on grand solar minimums and crop loss. And he, like I said, he's very in tune with that. So, yeah, Juniper B says it's already bad. Absolutely, it is already bad. And that's what Dave, you know, Dave literally called before we got on the show tonight. And, you know, that's what he said. You know, we got problems. And he wanted to know if we would join him tonight. And we said, absolutely. It's been a while. Good to see him. And absolutely honored to join him. But, yeah, Matt is definitely facing some situations with his yields. You got Millennial Farmer, who posts on Facebook quite a bit, and he has showed a lot of crop damage too, folks. We've seen droughts, we've seen floods. I mean, it is one thing after another. It's not just one particular thing that's causing all the climate change. There are multiple factors involved, and that's what I always try to talk about with people with climate change. I always tell them, like, look, there's no definitive answer. It's a very complex system. I know there's a lot of good guesses out there, but if you got the time, I'd be more than happy to talk to you about how this works and how the science actually works, and not CO2 induced or anything of that nature. Looking at GFS Outlook, you see the storm there, Mindy, I believe that's Mindy, off the east coast there, moving away. Let's go backwards, though, and check out what we have left of Nicholas, which is all rain right now and moving off the coast before possibly seeing some more action near the northeast. Boston might see some rough seas, but other than that, we are going to just have basic rain showers. Here in the northeast, I can tell you what, we had a line of storms move through yesterday, and we got at least an inch of rain, if not more. So very heavy rain moving into the area. High pressure setting up for us starting on Monday next week. More rain across the south. And we finally start to see some snowflakes flying across Wyoming and Montana in the higher elevations. Now, I will say this. Last year, I had already reported on some pretty impressive weird snowstorms. So we're already kind of at a late start compared to last year. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to see a brutal cold winter with lots of snow. It just might smack us right in the face instead of ease on in like it kind of did last year. I felt like the weather was chillier in September and got colder in October and colder in November. And by the time December was here, we were already used to 30 degrees or lower. So, but anyway, moving forward, this forecast on Monday, high pressure dominating in the northeast, dry across most of the central United States, some rain showers in the northern Great Plains, and then heavy rain up there in Canada as well. Going over the Great Lakes, we'll get some rain showers from that moving into the northeast by Tuesday and Wednesday. High pressure behind it, dropping the temperatures. And that low pressure system that we saw last time we broadcasted, not quite spinning as much over the northeast of the United States. So that colder air will stay further northeast towards Greenland versus trying to make an entrance here in the U.S. But temperatures do begin to drop. Now, this is an interesting signal from the GFS. This almost has features of a nor'easter, the way this thing forms and runs up. And look, it does turn into snow as it hits Canada. So the air is definitely going to be cold enough to support any moisture in Canada in this part, the northeast or the southeastern part of Canada, will be seeing snow if they get moisture with these temperatures. But high pressure really trying to dominate here at the end of September, keeping things dry everywhere. More dry, high pressure moving across the central part of the United States. Cold air moving in or trying to invade the northern part of the United States. And we'll have to keep an eye on the tropics too here, the beginning of October. We got another system that could be organizing here in the middle of the Gulf by October 2nd. So what's this mean for the temperatures? Well, taking a look at it now, our daytime highs, right now they are running a bit above average here in the northeast, but that will change here in the next several days. So a little bit, this is what I would call summer's last kiss here for us in the northeast. Look out in the northwest, cold air just plunging into the northwest. You can clearly see the contrast of daytime highs in the 50s, and then just to the east, we're in the 70s and 80s. This is next week. Temperatures really dropping in the northeast, the Great Lakes, the northern plains. You're going to see temperatures in the 60s and 50s, and overnight lows in the 40s, possibly flirting with the 30s in certain parts of New York and Maine and New Hampshire as well. Here we are, September 24th, trying to warm up one more time before all that high pressure tries to dominate at the end of this month. And you can see temperatures struggling in the northeast, Great Lakes, and across the northern plain states, staying in the 40s and 50s at night. Heating up again across the central part of the United States by the 27th is a speculation, but high pressure dominates once again as we go into October 1st before Indian summer officially should be winding down. We shall see. This has been an interesting summer, short and hot. Maybe medium and hot, not short. But I'll tell you this, with the predictions and what the forecasting and what the models are showing us and the amount of ice that are already at the poles, the indications are showing us, and the report of a weak polar vortex. It appears that we are going to have another weak polar vortex this winter. And a weak polar vortex just means that cold Arctic air escapes from the Arctic and dips south. And if the jet stream is also wavy, like it is with low solar wind, you're also talking about colder temperatures in places like Texas, what we saw last year. That could definitely be repeated again this year. Absolutely. Maybe in Georgia this time, maybe in Mississippi, maybe in Alabama. So, and on top of that, throw in La Nina of this year. So buckle up, folks. Enjoy the warmth while we can. This is beautiful weather right now. We're not getting a lot of tropical hurricane threats right now. It doesn't appear that way. Weak signals of that in the future. Temperatures staying pretty nice here in the next couple weeks. But I think that we are going to see the changes, and it's just going to slap us right in the face before you know it. We'll be putting on our jackets and hanging out our Christmas wreaths on the door because we'll be confused about how cold it is early. I do believe we'll see an early cold spell, like below freezing, sometime for most of us anyway, by late October, early November. at least, for the majority of this. The northern part of the United States, northeastern plains, Great Lakes, northeast, and the northwest, definitely very possible to start seeing those freezing temperatures by mid-October, really. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us. Please join us over at David Dubine's program at Adapt 2030 is on Revolution Radio. I don't know if Mari has put the link in or not. Mari, did you find that? Big shout out to our paid subscriber on here and Patreon. You make this happen for us, and that's absolutely right. The donations that we get on Patreon, really, they go back into the investment of our channel, our brand, our website. We want to make it better. Mario wants to make it faster. We want to put more information out. Folks, again, any donations you guys do is appreciated on Patreon or our PayPal as well. Or support us by checking out our Teespring shop here on our YouTube channel. And check out our Grand Solar Minimum shirts, hats, whatever. We have pretty much anything you would like to put the logo of Grand Solar Minimum. If anything, it's a conversation starter with people who aren't aware with natural solar cycles. Just make sure you have a few hours of their time, because you can't really explain this stuff in 5 minutes. There is the link in the chat if you're listening right now. Mari has put the link for the podcast here very, very shortly. As soon as we leave the air here, we'll be quickly joining David Dubine over on his radio program and talk about what is going on right now, where we stand in the Grand Solar Minimum. And, you know, every time we talk to Dave, we always learn something as well. So I'm very eager to hear what he has to say tonight. All right, guys, thanks for tuning into this Grand Solar Minimum channel update. Remember to keep your prayers and thoughts with our friend David Birch in the UK. He has a very long road to recovery. And if you go to our Twitter page on Grand Solar Minimum, and also mine at Jake GSM, there is a thank you letter that I posted that is telling everyone how grateful him and his family are for the help. The donations that you have given him so far has been more help than anyone can imagine. So again, thank you all for responding to this. I want to thank Lee Wheelbarger. He also shared this on his program last night at KLW News. I can't tell you the amount of respect and support that we're getting for David right now, and he deserves it because he's had a rough year, folks. He's had a rough one, and again, like I said, we heavily rely on David for multiple things. So thoughts and prayers with you, David. We love you, brother. Everyone, have a good night, and we will talk soon.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.